Howdy, Joshua. Welcome to the show.
What's up, Andrew? Thanks for having me, bud.
Yeah, so like I've seen you on Twitter quite a lot, and like you usually have like excellent opinions on basically everything. And I always know it's like, oh, this guy's always liking like every last one of my tweets.
Well, so that's funny because like I don't remember at what point I came across you. It was a little while ago, but that's what I was saying. It's like every time I saw one of your tweets, I was like, yeah, I don't know, whatever this is, I like it. It's good stuff.
Yeah, and it's like, and for like I've never heard you actually like speak before until I saw you on Matt's show the other day. And I was just like, whoa, this guy's cool. It's like, I gotta talk to this guy. Howdy, John Hartman in the comments. And he's my partner in crime on quite a few of our live book readings.
Oh, nice.
And so today we're not, I decided to go with a fairly indefensive title that no one should have a problem with about stop being fat. And I was in my former life, I was a fat kid. So it's like I spent all of high school like really being like really dumpy. And the thing that it never gets talked about. Well, it like it does, but it doesn't. It's like, how like they're putting all of these kids on these psychoactive drugs, like these SSRIs and stuff like that. And what they don't tell you is that those things make you fat, like really fat. Yeah. And it's like, and
well, so like, okay, it's you're either on SSRIs and you're getting fat, or you're on Adderall and then you're malnourished. It's one of the two, but whatever it is, it's completely ruining the whole function and hormones of your body.
Absolutely. Oh yeah. And it's like, it was like, they put me on, I had like a head twitch. That's what it was. I didn't have like depression or anything, but I had like a head twitch when I was in like elementary school. And the doctors told my parents, oh, just put him on these SSRIs and these dopamine DRIs, and he'll get better. And it's like I probably got better on my own, but like what ended up happening for a lot was that I got like one, really fat really quick, and like two, it's like I started to get, having just like serious emotional issues. Like just, I could not control my emotions anymore. And it's like, just the littlest things would set me off. And like, I figured out pretty quickly, like, oh, it's these medications. They're making me bad, and they're making me fat. They're making me unhappy. They're making me unhealthy. And it's like, and I just, and I knew like I knew these things are making me bad. And like these drug companies though, like, they don't make money if the kid doesn't take the pill. And so it's like, and the doctors don't make their commissions if they don't, if you're not taking your prescriptions or whatever, because they make commissions off these things. And so it's like, they wouldn't let me off of them until like until I was like about to graduate high school. So like I started on these psychoactive drugs when I was 9. And by the time so like I spent my entire middle school and high school career, like I would run cross country, I would eat decently, but like not like really great, but like, I would lift and everything. And I did everything I could to be like in shape, and like nothing worked. So I get into my senior year of high school, and I finally just like put my foot down, because like my parents wouldn't let me stop and my doctor didn't want to let me stop. So I just like put my foot down and I said, no more. I'm not taking them. It's like, and I spent that entire year grounded because I wouldn't take my pills. No, yes, literally, like I canceled my Xbox membership, that year, because just to show them how serious I was. Like, you have nothing on me, because like you have nothing to ground me from now. And this like, so it's, and I started losing tons of weight. It's like in the first like few months I came off of it, I lost like 20 pounds.
Yeah.
And it was amazing. It's like I could start thinking clearly for the first time like ever. It's like I could start seeing like multiple steps ahead and seeing how consequences of my actions would like work out and everything. And it's just my life so much improved. And I think this is like what is at so much of the heart of or that, at least a major contributing factor to a lot of the health crisis we have in this country right now. That we're putting kids from the time they're early in life on these drugs that make them sick and unhealthy.
Well, I mean, it's not just early in life. For the most part, if you're born in a hospital, there's a good chance that your mother's getting an epidural. You are literally born into the world on painkillers. You are coming into the world numbed to your true existence and experience. And it's honestly, like, sometimes I kind of like think it's ridiculous how much I've spent the past year or so really like learning more about birth and pregnancy. And it's like, I probably shouldn't be, as a man, that concerned about it, but as a man who's having a child and wants to have a lot more, that's your,
you too?
That's your legacy. Like, if what are your accomplishments, as a man? Like, having children is a big part of that for me. And so having healthy kids and wanting to do everything in the world for them is at like the utmost priority. And so I found myself getting into all this, pregnancy related stuff and birth related stuff. The whole process of a hospital birth is so completely destructive. Like, woman's not supposed to be on her back to give birth in the first place. It's unnatural.
Really?
It's an unnatural position. You're supposed to be squat down or on all fours.
Really? I never knew that.
I mean, so like the way that I have best had explained to me by a woman is like, try to take a shit while laying on your back. See,
that makes sense.
Does that seem like that would work? No, you need to be in that squat position.
Huh.
So it's already an unnatural position, which is why most women have trouble with the birth itself. And then you do the epidural. So now they're numb, so their body can't even respond properly. The pelvis can't open up. And so then they need a C-section. And so then you're creating more problems, because if you don't come out through the vagina, right through the birth canal, there's a compression effect that's happening, which changes the shape of the rib cage and the skull and everything. And there's all the bacteria that you're supposed to be, exposed to on your way coming out. And then the first thing happens is someone wearing like rubber gloves catches you, and then they start poking you with needles and rubbing stuff on you, antibacterial shit. And before you know it, it's like they've already doomed you, and you've been in the world for half a second. And it just gets worse when you think of, how much, because women aren't healthy, they struggle to lactate properly and breastfeed. So then you're formula fed, and all the formulas are made with high fructose corn syrup and soybean oil, canola oil, all that shit. You like, they always say children are the future. Well, if that's how you treat our children, our future is fucked. Our future is fucked. And so the health aspect starts from before the beginning. It starts from what's the mother. It goes back till the beginning of time, since humans started doing, like, it's how was the both parents eating years leading up to the pregnancy? How's the woman eating during the pregnancy? People don't quite.
Oh shit! I think we're timing out. Shoot. Oh shoot. See if I can get him back. I don't know if y'all can see me right now. Hello?
We good?
Can you hear me? Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
All right, perfect. Let me see what just happened. Okay, so it looks like all right, good. So you didn't miss anything. All right, so I missed a little bit of what you said, and that was
what's the last thing you heard?
You're starting your life basically fucked. And
did you hear what I said about kind of like you're going? It's even before the birth. It's the pregnancy.
Oh yeah,
it's the life of the parents. And so when, especially right now, when a certain medical procedure is sort of kind of like the biggest issue in the world, a lot of people, I'm gonna choose my words wisely. Never know what gets like censored. It's like, okay, so people always say, I'm not anti-jab, just this one. And one, it's a huge cop out. And two, what it does is it shows you that that person just started paying attention like in 2020 and never cared to look at anything before. And so I'm like confidently full blown in every way possible, anti every single jab that could possibly exist. And people don't understand how destructive every single one of these things are. And a major part of that is, you know, they always say babies are resilient. Like, oh yeah, you know, there's a side effect and then they'll be fine. These side effects can't be seen in days, weeks, months, years. We're really talking decades and generations.
Yeah.
And so when you have uh, these type of medical interventions of all different kinds from generation to generation, you see it, the effects are going through all the way down the line. And so our medical industry and the realm of science, which just kind of says like, oh yeah, this ingredient or this medicine or this food or something seems to be safe. Like the average like the average healthy person today, so above average as far as health, has no idea what true health even is. Like everyone's seen the statistics of like even 20 years ago, the testosterone of a 70-year-old is higher than like a 20-year-old's testosterone now. We have no idea what our, you know, grandparents, great grandparents, and so forth even had as far as health goes. We have become so degenerated. And when you compile this, you know, over time, so the more generations you've had where your ancestors have had access to pharmaceuticals, they've had processed foods, they've had, you know, tainted water with, you know, fluoride and chlorine, and then the drugs that are in the water. It's a long, slow process of degeneration. And so you can take it more like in an acute sense where it's like, oh, I changed my diet and, you know, over a few weeks or months, things started getting better. And that impact is still there too, but we don't pay enough attention to this long process because you can't just see the results, you know, tomorrow.
Oh, not just that. I mean, it's intergenerational just in your habits. You know, these new habits we formed because of, you know, junk food and all this stuff. This gets handed down generation to generation, and it gets compounded by the fact that like these companies get subsidies and all that. And so when you look at you know, how much like junk food costs compared to like regular food, you know, it's like it's not like a lot, it's not like a lot cheaper, but you know, it's substantially cheaper in terms of your time. It's like you just go grab it and you're all done. And so like you don't have to spend that time. You can spend that time working, you can spend that time resting. And you know, if you're not actually cooking your food or whatever, or you know, drinking your milk raw, then you know, it actually you know, you think you're like saving money, you think you're like saving you know, whatever, but you're not. It's like this stuff all has a cost on the back end. And and this was like something I kind of realized in college was that, you know, it's like, cause you know, this is like when I got into college for the first time, I started, you know, like really get go. Cause now that I'm like, oh, you know, it's actually easy for me to lose weight now because I'm not on these god awful drugs. And so I started like weightlifting and bodybuilding. I started eating clean. It's like, cause I like my parents, they didn't quite feed me very well. And I realized that at the, you know, in college, like you know, cause now I had like, you know, the internet, I could, you know, go watch YouTube and, you know, start figuring out all this stuff about like, you know, just eating chicken, you know, clean chicken, eating organic, eating, you know, you know, eating my vegetables, which is like, I'd never done that before. And like, I had not eaten like regular vegetables in like high school and all that. And I started like looking great and feeling great. And it's like, and like, you know, I would just notice like my energy is so much better. And you know, when I started to get healthy, and, you know, it's like, I got way more done. I got way more productive. I got way smarter, you know, like I could really start thinking clearly. And this is like what, and it's like, you know, I just realized that, you know, it's like our food is, you know, it's either poison to us or it's like almost like life-changing saving to us. And it's like, it's everything we eat. And, you know, one of the things you talked about on what was it on King Build was the bacteria, and you mentioned that just a little bit earlier. It's like, I was always raised to think, oh, bacteria bad. We have to really wash our hands, and that was another thing is that I was on antibiotics for like acne. It's like that's like the worst thing possible for acne. Because your body needs healthy bacteria.
People, the whole approach to how we deal with problems, it's like, if you kind of think about it, it's the same general philosophy across every field. The same problems with germ theory are the same problems with modern monetary theory. It's
oh yeah,
everything
scientific.
It's all the exact same mindset. And so what you have are people who can't determine what a cause is and what an effect is. And so
I'm convinced that's largely because of the food. It's like you
exactly.
get so much smarter when you start eating right.
And I think that's kind of the biggest problem with the kind of health and fitness space, is that it's so focused on a superficial element to it. I mean, what people know but sometimes kind of ignore is, you might have heard the concept of form follows function. And when I first heard that, it really clicked for me, because things that function the proper way develop a good form. There's a reason why, like, when you see like wild animals, they're all beautiful. Like, there's no retarded animals. There's no like fucked up ugly animals, unless like just like, the specific species, it just kind of happens to be sort of freaky to us.
It's when they get domesticated that there's problems.
Well, there's that element to it. But it's interesting is that, have you ever heard of the word physiognomy?
Yeah, I've heard that.
Okay, so physiognomy is basically the idea that like how your face and structure has developed directly correlates to your other traits, personality, intelligence, behavior, things like that. And there's I've actually been in the middle of like writing a long Twitter thread, but it's about domestication. And there was, I think it was like in Russia, they were trying to domesticate these silver foxes. These foxes had this beautiful tail of this like incredible soft fur and beautiful color. And so I think it originally had started from they wanted to domesticate them so they could have them easier and just basically produce a bunch of beautiful fur. But what happened was, when they domesticated them, their entire appearance changed. Their facial formity changed. Their because they're breeding for behavior, not for aesthetics, right? They're breeding for it's the same thing that happened with wolves.
Yeah,
we're breeding for the friendly ones. When you become friendlier, when you become domesticated, your appearance changes. The shape of the eyes change. The skull widens. The eyes get bigger. The ears get floppier. And then the foxes did, even their whole tail changed, and it became useless as far as the fur, because it was no longer this beautiful silvery fur. What your appearance is directly correlated to the function. And you can really see this in myself. I've been an athlete my whole life. Like I was, I don't know, 3 years old and playing t-ball and, little league and soccer and basketball and stuff. And that was pretty much my whole life. I played sports forever. And there was always this thing where it's like, okay, you could be fast, you could be strong. But when you called someone athletic, there was something about their ability to move. Because I always knew there was always a kid who could run down the field as fast as possible. And there was always a kid who was really strong. But there was something that had those elements, but could move well. They were agile, and they, could control what they were doing. And there was a visual aesthetic to the movement. Their function showed a form that was beautiful.
Yes.
And so when you see an animal running or galloping, there's this elegance to it, right? It's this beautiful expression, right? And so a lot of people, I've like, especially I see this a lot like on Twitter, where there people have gotten into like gait analysis. where it's just, it's analyzing the way, literally just the way that you walk. It's as simple as that. The way that someone walks can tell you so much about them. And if you go to any populated area,
and they run too. It's
Yeah,
like
yeah,
the way
same
people
thing.
run. It's like
you see someone running down your neighborhood street and you go, that person is that, whatever that is, it's fucked up. I don't know what's wrong, but it's fucked up.
Something's not correct about that.
That's the thing. There's an innate trigger that your brain goes, that's wrong.
Yeah.
Right? Like,
and you know it.
You know it, and you might not understand movement in any way, shape, or form. You might not know anything about running, but you go, that run looks ugly. And then you see something else and you go, that's beautiful. And the you see, like, if you go out in public, 99.9% of it's like a fucking unicorn to find someone, and you go, oh, the way that their stride works and the way that their hip turns, they're actually even walking right, which is like the most basic thing you could possibly do. So when you do things that are healthy, that are in alignment with nature, with what is true and good, it becomes beautiful by default. The form and the function are sort of connected, which is why, like, you go through history and look at various architecture, and there's a beauty to it.
Yeah.
But it wouldn't work if it wasn't beautiful, if it didn't create arches and shapes and pyramids and
those natural proportions, right, like with the golden ratio.
Yes, the golden ratio, right?
And your face uses the golden ratio too. That's how we can determine what a beautiful face looks like. Is right. Has all the proper ratios of the spirals.
And a beautiful face is a direct sign of internal health.
Yes.
Right. So the reason why we have the idea of beauty and attractive people is because it's a signifier of health. And the healthier someone is, the better, literally the better person that they will be. And as far as mating goes, the better, stock they'll be for reproduction. But like, if you, there's like, they've done studies, attractive people are more successful, right?
Yeah, all the time.
If you are a salesman, right, and you knock on someone's door, and you're attractive and you're not attractive, the attractive person is always going to get a better response. It's just like it's our nature to do it, because though there certainly are attractive people who suck, right? Like, that's not like, it's not that it's impossible, but being healthy develops the person properly. And that means, like, what the nutrients that the mother stocked like up on prior to pregnancy, what she ate through pregnancy, and then what the child grows up eating. Now, you can be properly formed, everything comes into place properly, and then you live a shitty lifestyle, and then you can,
it just screws it all up.
Yeah, your emotions will suck, your personality will suck, you can lose like your brain function and intelligence. But
that's going to be the first thing to go. You're never going to know you had it.
Well, so look at, you see this with a lot of athletes and like celebrities, actors and musicians and stuff, where they live very degenerate lifestyle, eating junk food, being on the road, not sleeping, drugs, alcohol.
Yeah.
And they're still like alive and attractive at an old age. That's just because they were born with all this nutritional inheritance.
But you do see a decline, though. You see such a decline in them. And it's really sad to see it too. Like, you'll see their skin just like it doesn't get like dull, but it looks like
it does. It
looks sick.
It gets gray, right? It loses its color, and its elasticity, and it looks just like dry and sad and old, right? And everyone, like, most people have seen like an old person who's like 80 something years old, and they're just like fucking with it still, and they're still really active, and they're, they can work out, or they can, garden or do whatever they want. And there's other people who it's like they're hobbling around. And so all these things are different expressions of who you are fundamentally, everything that like puts you together. And so, I mean, I'm very lucky. My mom raised me eating very good food. We always had, after being breastfed, she gave me lamb chops just put in a blender, right? I never ate baby food.
Really?
So I mean, I grew up.
You can do that with babies?
Of course. Yeah. I mean, like once you have because you're pretty much waiting until they have teeth before you want to give them any food that's not, you know, breast milk.
Yeah.
But at that point, you can give baby like little pieces of meat and stuff, and yeah.
Okay. I never even knew that.
Well, so that, you know, that's the crazy
Yeah.
thing, is that in the recommended baby feeding thing, it's like the first food they recommend is like a rice cereal, which isn't even like a proper human food.
It's like, and it's probably the white rice too. It's not even brown rice.
Well, no, white rice would be far healthier.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
So rice has to be made white, right? You have to remove the bran and the germ and all that for it to be digestible. There's phytic acid in the brown rice, which will destroy your gut.
Oh man, I never knew that.
Yeah. But it's, you know, white rice is a fine food, but there's 1,000 foods that are better. There's really no purpose to give a baby rice cereal. You would just want to give them things like eggs and meat and milk as they're sort of weaning off of the breast milk. But yeah, my mom was born in Iran, so a lot of Persian food in the house.
Yeah, you look Persian. Yeah. You look really Persian.
Yeah. So we ate a lot of lamb, and I ate a lot of salmon and chicken and beef and stuff like that. And so I was given a pretty decent diet, but like the real nutritious diets are like what farmers kind of eat, right? Like you're getting tons of real fat and all those fat soluble vitamins. The fat soluble vitamins are the most crucial for developing the jaw structure properly, getting that nice like wide jaw so your teeth all fit. Like braces, if humans needed braces, then how would we have made it to this point, you know, needing to eat? We need braces because we're born deformed and our teeth don't fit into our jaws. So I didn't have like lots of butter, lots of organ meat. But you know, I still ate pretty darn well, and I'm very, very lucky for it. But you know, as you go on, like your health will fluctuate based on what you do to it, and the bacteria is a very involved part of that equation. As you eat different foods, you're introducing different bacteria, and the more bad stuff you eat, the more of a certain bacteria you need to sort of eliminate and deal with all the junk that's in your system. But
I actually want to go into this, right here, like, because one of the things that, you know, actually I want to rewind a little bit before I get to that. Let's go back to, you know, that domestication thing, because there are actually other species that do the same thing, like with pigs. Like one of the problems we have here in Texas is wild hogs. Right. And what happened, a long time ago, now they're like a really big apex predator, you know, but you know what happened a while, a few hundred years ago when people first started settling in Texas, was that we introduced just regular old pigs, and what happened was a few of them, or more than a few of them, got out, and they started forming these wild groups of wild hogs. But what happens when a hog, because it is no longer domesticated, it takes like a few weeks, but they'll start growing tusks, they'll start getting really furry, and they'll get really aggressive. Their testosterone goes through the roof.
The same hog will have a physical transformation, right? It's not, you're not even talking about like
it's a night and day transformation. I mean, it's like going from like these kind of like bald, kind of pinkish bit with maybe some spots on it, type of animal that's kind of flat,
and it happens just within a matter of weeks.
And they get
so do they have any idea what it is specifically that causes this?
It's an epigenetic trigger, but basically,
but
now
do they know what triggers it exactly? Is it something about just like a understanding that you're free? Is it
something?
Like
it's something, something like that. But it takes just a matter of like weeks for it to turn into this kind of looks like a boar, and it's like the nature of its meat changes and everything, and but yeah, it's like this domestication that causes all of these problems. And I guarantee you, it's like if it works that way with the fox, if it works that way with the pig, it's gonna work that way with the the bald bipedal primates, like
Right.
us. And this is one thing I think that the like the state and the corporations also, they've been doing this to us. Like they've been domesticating us, like with
Yeah,
the
of course.
fluoride in the water. Like, oh my god, did I find out how bad that is for you? And it's like it's like I started supplementing my with iodine for the they tell you when you start supplementing with iodine for the first like few weeks, because iodine is going to it's the second level energy level below the fluoride, which is a high, it's like kind of a, basically it's going to outcompete fluoride in the position for, because your body, it uses iodine a lot to create hormones. And so, but when it doesn't have enough iodine, it will use fluoride instead. But that's a lesser molecule. It's like that's a lesser atom. It's not the one that your body needs. It kind of does a similar function when you put it in there, but it's just not the same. And but one thing that will happen is that your body is going to start flushing out all of the fluoride, and you will feel so shitty.
Yeah.
And it's like for the first like 2 weeks, and then you feel amazing. Like I take iodine daily now. It's like a pick me up, and it almost has like a caffeine effect on me. And but one of the things that they figured out about fluoride, though, and I guarantee you this is why they put it in the water, is it greatly lowers your testosterone. It greatly lowers your aggression. It makes you like really docile, and you're stuck. It's like almost like not like docile, but like an apathy where you just don't care. You're just like, whatever. And again, it's like I just started like with iodine supplementation a few weeks, like not weeks, but just like 1 or 2 years ago. And even then, like that night and day difference, I was already in great shape. I was already taking lots of supplements, lots of fatty acids, lots of good clean food. And just getting that iodine out. I mean, getting that fluoride out and replacing it with iodine, which is what your body is supposed to have. It was just a night and day difference. Even in my late 20s. And it's like, and I swear they're doing this to us deliberately, to dumb us down, to domesticate us and kind of just make us herd animals. And and I guarantee this is why this is like all this stuff with plastics, that getting into the food, all the stuff about the bad food, and don't even get me started on the food pyramid, but all this stuff, this is deliberate domestication by the ruling class of normal people. And so like no wonder we're having all of these health problems. No wonder we have a health crisis in America. They're putting us through the domestication, and not even to mention like the Prussian model school where we sit on our butts for almost all of the day. And it's like, and you're allowed 45 minutes for like exercise or whatever, like that's like basically the definition of free range chickens, is that they're allowed, for like chickens, is like they're allowed to be, if they're like, they qualify as free range, they have to have like a certain amount of time out of the cage per day. And it only has to be like a few hours. Like
I don't even think it's that. And what qualifies as being outside is like they can still be in the cage, but the sun is like just they have to have.
Yeah,
it's all bullshit marketing terms. Honestly, like and I talked about this on King Pill, but like when it comes to food, you need to. It's in your best interest to literally know exactly where it comes from. But and that's what you're seeing is like. This last 2 years have really starting to wake people up, and people are starting to reject everything, which is really good. And think about how many more the rates of homeschooling are going to be like we've never even seen, right?
God, I hope so.
It's going to change. It's like all this shit has been terrible, but I'm so grateful it all happened because it changed my life, and it I don't think I would have met my woman otherwise and been set down this path, and I guess like I could have been just like stuck living some bullshit life and just like not. I mean, and I was already kind of like I already had my opinions on the government and my opinions on health, but they've changed a lot in the last 2 years. And
I mean, if your opinions haven't changed, like in the past few years, it's not just that you're like hopelessly blue pilled. You're completely been domesticated. That's what this is.
So
it's
yeah,
like you've been domesticated. That's what that is.
You are either a complete brainwashed zombie, or you were already based red pilled before it started, and you're like, yeah, you already knew what was going on.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, so that's the thing, right? Like you said you had like a head tick or something.
Yeah, I had like a head twitch.
Yeah,
my head
and
that.
it's like if you weren't sitting down stuck in a classroom, I bet you that wouldn't happen, right? Like I got put on Adderall in the what was it, the 7th grade or something, because like, and for always my teachers are like, Josh is a bright kid, he never pays attention in class. Like, yeah, why the fuck would I want to be sitting down here listening to your boring ass for 8 hours a day? Like, let me go run around outside and climb shit and break shit. So yeah, I'm gonna disrupt your class because I don't know what else to do. But you're just like, well, there's
it's like you're the kind of boy. It's like this whole system is created to just squash. It's like it's not about the other kids. It's about making you into a girl. And it's like, I don't know if you ever noticed that, but like the rules are designed to make boys into girls. It's like you couldn't have designed it better. Yeah, and because let's face it, there's never any danger of like the girls, overthrowing the government. Like that's never going to be a thing. Yeah, it's never been a thing in human history. And so like the I feel like this is like what you just got into right there with the education system. This is the main course, so to speak, in the satanic buffet that is the state's domestication of the human population.
The schools are where I don't even know what to call them anymore, but like all the mental illnesses or whatever they call all those different classifications that they're now referring to as like neurodivergent. It's like when someone says, "Oh, I'm neurodivergent," it's like, so you're retarded? Like, what are you? Is that what you want to tell me? That's fine, but that there's that little creation of people being all fucked up, and then there's the victimhood mentality where then people want to claim, put a label on the thing. I have this thing makes me different and special. But think about the amount of kids that are on various prescription drugs, right? You're running the whole gamut from, the Adderall type thing, Adderall, Ritalin, I forgot the other one. Then there's the SSRIs, there's the antidepressants. Like kids are just on this stuff all the time. Like when I was young, like, someone being on ADD med was like the only thing you had ever heard of, basically. And now it just gets worse and worse and worse. And so it's the school element where it manufactures the mental illness by being in this unnatural state, eating unnatural food.
That's what does it. It's that's why these things look like they're contagious. It's like they're not like quite contagious like the way a disease is, but like that, like if you're put in a place where everybody is in a chaotic state of mind.
Contagion. The social contagion.
It is. It's the egregore. You know what I mean?
Yeah, there's like if every one of your friends is trans, now you're a loser for not being trans, right? Like that woman, Abigail Schreier. Do you know who that is?
I don't know her.
She was on Rogan like a year ago. She wrote a book about trans kids. I don't remember what it was called.
Oh, okay. I think I remember this one now. Yeah.
She brought up like the statistics of specifically the trans women. No, sorry, not trans women.
Yeah, trans girls. Yeah.
Well, no, girls think they're trans. Yeah. Or non-binary or whatever. Yeah. And it's because the way that girls social groups sort of work is that they have to do the same thing. And so it's like you have a group of like 8 girls and 6 of them have to be non-binary or trans or something. So there is the peer pressured social contagion element, but there's also the environment itself is creating, like, it's destroying their mental and physical health. And then it's the overprescription. It's just the willingness, like the first default thing is, oh, got a pill for that, got a drug for that, as opposed to let's completely change this person's diet. And people think that that's too hard, or it's unsustainable. If you are telling me that your willpower is so weak that you can't control what you put into your own face hole, then why would I consider anything else that you have to say? Because there's not a single thing that a human being...
You can't say no.
There's not
That's
a
the point of
single
domestication.
thing
You can't
that
say
a human
no.
being has more control over than what they put in their mouth. And if you can't control that, why are you talking about global politics? Like, get your shit together.
Oh, that's why.
Yeah,
That's
and it creates those problems. And so then because people don't want to actually fix their problems, they look for external problems that are really, zoomed out and over there. It's like, oh, I got it. Read Marx, it'll solve all the problems. And it's like, you got bigger problems to solve. You can't even wipe your own ass, or
talk about big. Yeah,
fatty. Yeah. or you think that you're, like a dragon or something. I don't know. But you should probably get that figured out before you're trying to go, forward and change the world. And so the food is such a just fundamental part of that, because the food is us, right? You are what you eat. It's what makes up your cells. It's what makes up everything in your body. And it's not just, again, like the whole health thing is about just like losing weight. And yeah, like being obese is bad. But then when people focus about health, it's still from an unhealthy perspective. They go to eat all these like, oh, I'm going to eat carton egg whites and this non-fat yogurt and oatmeal.
What?
And
it's
there's
like you're eating all the wrong shit now.
There's no nutrition in there, but yeah, you'll lose weight. And so you'll see people who go to the gym and work out and they're very low body fat and they're still very unhealthy. They're deficient in just about every nutrient. Their gut bacteria is a mess. And so you will see it in their behavior and their personality. Someone might be very attractive, but they'll be a shitty person. And they'll be a shitty person because of what their habits and their behavior are. And we were talking about skin earlier.
Mm-hmm.
If I post a picture of myself and I'm shredded and it's like six pack, people are like, man, you look great. You look super healthy. And then you zoom in and it's like, man, your eyes look bloodshot and like your skin is getting like super wrinkly and just like you look dead. But hey, man, it's like you see this all the time with like guys who are like super roided out. They look like death, but they're just jacked to shit and they got 4% body fat. And people instinctually go, that's healthy, because being low body fat is supposed to signal health.
Yeah.
You weren't really supposed to be able to get there really any other way unless you were malnourished, which then the lack of muscle signifies low health too. But now, due to the foods that we've manufactured that aren't real foods and people taking things like, steroids and stuff, you can create the illusion of health. And especially on the female side, when they do all kinds of plastic surgery and makeup, it's just the attractiveness. It's the Uncanny Valley.
No.
Uncanny Valley was like I believe it was a book, but basically the concept is like you had all these humanoid type things that were like robots or something, but it's not quite human, and your brain goes, there's something wrong. So like if someone is wearing like makeup to make them look old in a movie and their things just look like they're moving a little bit wrong, we call that response the Uncanny Valley, because your brain goes, this isn't right. Something's wrong here. And it's supposed to signify like that person is severely like diseased or something. And so you see it in like, did you watch Rogue One, the Star Wars movie?
Yeah.
So you know how they did Leia and Grand Moff Tarkin, like they sort of superimposed the whole thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
When you're looking at it, you can tell that it's not real, right?
Yeah.
It moves just slightly wrong.
Their face is not quite right.
Right. And that triggers this Uncanny Valley response, which is what you get with people who do like a bunch of Botox and plastic surgery. And so people have forgotten how to look closely. So when you're looking afar at somebody, you go, that person looks healthy because, they have low body fat.
There's nothing compared to anymore. You get
closer, and there's the actual elements of being properly nourished and like vitality, right? It's that vital element. And so all these diets out there are starvation diets. I don't care if you're vegan or you're keto. the way the majority of people approach these diets, it's starvation, it's depletion of the body. And so you need foods that are deeply nourishing, that have lots of rich nutrients in them. And that's where, don't be fat, but having 5 extra pounds of body fat is going to probably make you healthier if you're like already a lean person.
Yeah.
So like,
I changed the title, Stop Being Domesticated.
There you go. There you go. So it's like, don't shy away from butter, even if it's going to make you gain a couple pounds, because you'll be healthier for it. Like, eat the fattier meats, eat the organs and the shellfish that have these rich nutrients. Go for those foods as opposed to, I have my macros and I'm trying to, I'm just trying to get super shredded. That's not health. It's a form of deception. It's the illusion of health. And that's where we get everything wrong in our world, is people going for the thing that looks like the thing, but not actually the thing.
Yeah. And the funny you mentioned keto, though, because I will push back on you just a little bit right there, because for if you understand like what's natural for us, it's like we didn't always have agriculture, so we couldn't grow tons and tons and tons of carbs. We couldn't. And so so your body has this natural process called keto, for when, we could basically just live off of, fat and meat and vegetables, and to where, these grains and stuff, and these carbs and sugars were just not a part of your diet. Like, think about like with fruit. You're not supposed to have that year round. It's only like supposed to be like one season out of the year.
Well, not only that, but fruit never had that much, meat on it, right? It was a lot small. It was smaller, it was more bitter, it had less sugar. So vegetables are very unnatural food. The vast majority of, like, there's no calories in there, and there's really no bioavailable nutrients. I tell everyone to not eat vegetables. Now, like, things like cucumber, tomato, zucchini, squash, those aren't vegetables, right? Those are technically fruit. So those types of food, like fruits, are a great natural food. They don't require any type of processing. Like for most greens, for instance, like salads are just kind of like the worst thing. For most greens, like, you can't even digest them unless you cook them. And just like the fruits that we've bred a certain way, you're talking about like a plant that had like nothing on it. That was lots of breeding done to make bigger leaves that were edible. But you're absolutely right that the majority of our caloric intake was always coming from animal foods, from meat. And so, yes, there's a lot fewer carbs there. But one thing that people don't understand is,
I'll push back on you just a little bit about vegetables, because there are some bacteria that you need from them in order to properly.
I completely disagree.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
The fermentation. So the only way that you should eat vegetables is if the vegetables themselves are fermented. So like sauerkraut and kimchi.
Okay. Yeah.
Because the vegetables are not digestible by our system. We do not have a digestive system that breaks down vegetable matter. It requires too much time. Like, there's a reason why cows have, four stomachs, because they are churning through all this stuff. Even our ape relatives, like, gorillas and stuff, they are eating like plant stock. They're not even eating leaves. They're eating plant stock, which is like super rough cellulose that our body literally can't break down. They have.
We used to have an appendix though for just that, though. Yeah,
that's not what the appendix is for. The appendix is quite literally an appendix, like the way we use it in a book, that provides a bunch of information for our body to break down various forms of toxicity. So your body is exposed to some toxic element, and the appendix just goes, I know what to do with that, and it sends what it needs to properly to dispose of that thing. The idea that like we don't need an appendix anymore is like the stupidest thing ever. Removing your appendix, removing your gallbladder, like, removing your tonsils, all these things are terrible for you. But I'm strongly against any vegetables. But the sauerkraut and the kimchi, by fermenting them, now you're getting the bacteria that are sort of required to break them down. But if you eat a bunch of vegetables yourself, that's when people get super gassy and super bloated. It's just not meant for us. But yeah, animal foods were our foods for, millions of years. And that was a lot of protein and a lot of fat. Now,
how do you feel about fasting?
So let me touch on this, and then I'll get to fasting. So what people don't understand is, like, do you know what glycogen is?
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, say what it is.
It's the stores of energy in your muscle. There's usually a like a form of carbohydrates that gets transformed and turned into it's basically fuel for your. It's like a battery for your.
So it's
for your muscles.
They are literally carb stores in our meat.
Yeah.
And then when people go, but wait a second, there's no carbs in meat.
Yeah,
there is, but after the animal is slaughtered, the carbs basically dissipate out of the meat.
Yeah.
So if you hunt an animal and you eat it fresh, you're getting carbs. If you eat the liver fresh, you're getting carbs. And so there were a lot of carb sources from animal foods. And then when you add things like dairy, right, there's carbs. When you add things like honey, which have been a great source of food for us for a long time, there's carbs. And again, there was minimal plant foods that we could eat. But we weren't in this, like, what people do. Like, it's one thing to be like, oh, I don't eat carb foods. And it's another thing to literally avoid all sources of carbs.
Yeah.
And that becomes very stressful on the system. Most people that if you look at people who are like all about keto, they start, even if they're like lean and muscular, their skin looks bad. They look depleted. They might be very, very lean. And you're like, man, you look like rough. There's a roughness to it that's harsher than it needs to be. And so carbohydrates play a certain role in preventing all that stress from happening, because insulin counter signals cortisol, right? So if your cortisol is high, if you eat carbs, your cortisol goes down. And that's why when people are stressed, they go for carbs, but they're sort of using that in like a more negative sense, but it doesn't mean that carbs on the whole are bad. And so fasting is a unique thing that is a very powerful tool, but people abuse it, just like people abuse everything. So like with the keto thing, people aren't eating a super, super rich keto diet with like tons of butter and tons of really fatty meat. They're usually eating like a low protein diet, and they eat a lot of like plant fats. They eat a lot of nuts and coconut and avocado.
Oh, no, stay away from that shit. No.
And so they tend to eat too few calories, too few protein, and too much unsaturated fat from nuts and avocado and stuff like that.
No, you need the saturated fat, or otherwise it's just awful.
Yeah. And so that becomes and they tend to also eat a lot of vegetables to fill themselves up, to make up more space. And that just causes more problems too. There's a lot of nutrients that the body just like doesn't really handle well. And so that creates problems. With fasting, I used to do intermittent fasting, like just to kind of.
Have you ever done extended fasting? Like
multiple day fasting?
Yeah.
Yeah. So
for like water or dry?
So I've only done water, and I'm now at the point where, not that I necessarily would do it frequently, but I think that the only way that you should fast is a dry fast.
Yes. That's where I've gone with, I try to do it once a month, and I look forward to the day where I'm basically, part of the way I use keto, is in the days leading up to a fast, because the hardest part of a fast is going through the keto flu, because your body will transition into ketogenesis, and that's usually fairly uncomfortable. So I like to just get that out of the way ahead of time, so I can really focus on the fullness of the fast. And I do intermittent fasting fairly regularly, but that just like with the way I work, it doesn't always work out that way because I need my brain to be operational for my job. I'm a code monkey, and so it's like if I'm not having food in the morning or whatever, it's just my brain just doesn't quite work the way it's supposed to. But for like the one day, for at least one day a month. And I'm in keto right now, where I'm preparing for a really long fast this coming weekend, and the like it has revolutionized my life. It's just I feel amazing, not just like not just like during, but but like after in the weeks leading after weeks at a time.
How long do you fast for? 3 days?
I try to do at least one day, so at least 24 hours. I'll try to go for 30 at least for on a regular fast. But the most I've ever gone is a little over 40, and right now, and this time around, I'm about to try to go for 56, because if you look at the real benefits of of extended fasting, what it really is that your autophagy gets turned on to the max, and you start getting rid of really senescent cells that just should not be there anymore. But when you're wet fasting with water, the process is 3 times slower. So you're getting 3 times less benefits. And what's
you're also
worse,
depleting your system.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's what makes it so much worse, is that you will, because a lot of okay. So what happens when you're water fasting is several things. It's more like water. It's not even water fasting. It's water dieting. It's not even particularly healthy, because you start losing organ. Right. And you'll start losing muscle really quickly, and you'll start really just leaching all kinds of. If you have a lot of toxins, it's like, okay, maybe that's water fast might be slightly better for like just getting those toxins out, because a lot of people do have a lot of toxins, and your body will get rid of those pretty quickly. But once you've kind of gotten to a minimal toxic point, which is like where I've gotten, you want to go dry fasting, because you get a lot more bang for your buck, but it's also easier. Because when you start drinking water, you try to fill up on water, it's like that's you're going to start really getting rid of nutrients. One, but what's worse is that when the water hits your gut bacteria wakes up and is like, oh, time for food, and you get hungry, and you're making yourself much more hungry. And whereas if you don't drink the water, you don't get hungry.
It makes it worse, and what you're doing to your body isn't as effective.
And you add on to the fact that you're also losing organ, you're also losing muscle, it's just so much worse. Whereas when you're dry fasting, your body actually triples the output of human growth hormone and growth factor, because and that's to prevent the muscle loss and the organ loss. You won't lose it then, and it's just amazing the way I feel afterwards. And it's not like some, initially I started doing it for like blood sugar control, and because that really helps with my blood sugar. I'm not like quite diabetic, but I had some problems. I couldn't figure out what it was, but I guess I've turned allergic to what is it, it's like the high fructose corn syrup. There we go. And anytime I eat anything with high fructose corn syrup, within 20 hours, I get a horrible psoriasis on my hands.
Well, you shouldn't be eating anything with high fructose corn syrup.
I know. It's like but I've been able to eat it my whole life. So I was like, what the hell's going on? But all of a sudden I figured out what it was. So I just cut it all out, but I still had it lingering for a long time. But when I started fasting, it all went away. And I'm like, oh, I gotta start doing this again, because it was literally to the point where I couldn't type without my fingers bleeding.
Yeah.
And so it's like, it's like this is getting in the way of making money, which is the thing I love the most. I'm okay, not really, but it's like, okay, this is a real problem. But fasting, it repairs your gut bacteria, it kills parasites. You feel like you're able to start really repair. That's a big thing. You're able to start repairing your gut bacteria. And if there's anything wrong with it, if you've taken antibiotics or whatever, you'll fuck them over really badly. And and so this is a way of actually healing that. And
I think that that element, a lot of the elements of fasting are really profound for a lot of people, because when they do eat, they're eating less than ideal foods. And so removing anything that's bad is going to help, especially if it's dry and the body can do what it needs to do. I don't think that most people are healthy enough to fast.
No.
And
it
so
takes practice.
So I think that an ideal approach would be, we were saying, stop being fat. would be to eat like legitimately a perfectly flawless diet. Don't eat anything that's not amazing for you. Zero processed food, just none of that shit. And do it for a substantial amount of time. Like we're talking about like at least 6 months. And you're probably going to have to gain a little bit of weight and load up on just nutrients and fat and everything good. All the vitamins, all the minerals, everything. Like, eating a ton of meat, eating a lot of organs, eating a lot of butter and milk, eating a lot of shellfish, all these foods that are deeply, deeply rich in every nutrient your body needs. To then prepare yourself to the stress of something like a fast, where you don't have to worry about the fact that your mineral content's low or your body's wanting for something. It's it's very much preparing for this process. But I was talking, I have a friend who eats, I kind of convinced him to eat the way that I do. And he's way more of a nerd than I am. He really gets down into the nitty gritty kind of stuff. And he's the one who kind of, I'd sort of like rejected fasting kind of outright. And he's the one that made me reconsider dry fasting with what he told me about how the body can synthesize its own water, its own fatty acids, like all that kind of stuff. But he
now,
also,
do you mind if I tell the audience about that just a little bit?
Yeah.
Because a lot of people think like, if you go 3 days, aren't you going to die? No, not at all. And then the reason is is if there's a big difference between a little bit of water and zero. Because when it's a little bit, your body realizes that it's kind of being tricked. When you're fasting, you're basically tricking your body in a kind of weird say. But when you're dry fasting, it's basically your body almost thinks it's asleep. And so what it will do is it'll start shutting down a whole lot of water intensive processes that use water. So but when you drink water, it tells it, oh, there's water available, so let me turn those processes back on. And so you'll actually dehydrate substantially faster drinking a little bit of water than you will if you drink zero water. And if you, but you can couple that with the fact that your body can take a lot of the triglycerides in your fat. And for every 110 grams of fat, it can create 100 grams of water. And so your body, and this is pure water. This is metabolically created water. It's pure. There's nothing, no fluoride, no metals, nothing. This is pure water. You cannot get by pure water. Right. Is like outside of a lab, and even then, it's that like they can't get it this pure. I mean, this is the water of life. And so your body can actually create stuff like this, and you can last weeks at a time. And this is something that they used to do in the Bible. Like when they wanted to, when the prophets wanted to meet God, what they practiced was dry fasting, and they would eat a high fat diet beforehand to do this. Yeah, and like they would eat, high in lentils, which has a high in omega-3s. And in addition to a high fat diet beforehand, and that was what they ended up using as fuel for. They would go for like days and days and days and weeks until they got those spiritual visions from God. And that and this was like this was a scientific method they had to be taught. They actually had a school for prophets to teach them how to do this sort of thing, because you can't just like walk in and do a multiple day fast. You just can't. It's
I mean, every culture has all these various practices which allow them to tap into these more spiritual realms, whether it's
fasting. Fasting is in every culture.
Right. You're right. Fasting is in every culture and religion. And then you have various, natural elements, various plants that are involved in many places too. And so everyone, like, there's a knowledge which was developed over time as being humans, right? Like that's kind of what separates us from the animals, right? Animals will mostly do the same thing just in perpetuity. and then we kind of start like piling up the info, especially once with the spoken word and then being able to write things down. Now information can sort of go beyond generations. And we've lost a lot of these ancient practices. And our modern
domestication.
our domestication, our modern world, what they claim to be science and medicine is completely removed from anything that resembles like true health and all that. But what's amazing is that like we're kind of, as people start to see it, we're like rediscovering, like we're coming back around and going back to the things that were really, really powerful. I wanted to say that my friend who was really talking to me about dry fasting and changed my opinion on it, he said that to really see the benefits of it, you really have to go like 5 to 7 days.
Yeah. That's tough.
Yeah.
But yeah.
And so I don't know like when I would even just sort of start toying with that.
You could have dramatic life extension benefits because of it. Also, let me recommend a book for you. It's called The Phoenix Protocol by August Dunning, who's a former NASA scientist. And, he developed this as a way of getting to Mars, because one of the problems for going to Mars is that you're exposed to so much cosmic radiation, it's going to shred your DNA. And there's not, you can, when you're going to the moon and back, there are decent ways of, minimizing the exposure, through, you have gold film, you can, work the life support systems, because there's a ton of water in that can capture all of the radiation. You can have an active magnetic field that can, kind of move a lot of the radiation around you the same way our Earth's magnetic field does. And so there's a lot of ways you can minimize that for like to the moon and back, or like to the International Space Station and back, or whatever. But when you're going to Mars, you're talking like a 2-year journey, and that's like 2 years one way. And so there's just you can't. So what you really need is a way to repair DNA. And what happens when you you dry fast, for extended periods of time, is that you would turn on what were, anti-aging genes. And yes, we have those, or really anti-aging proteins called sirtuins. Yeah. And what we've shown in like not just mice and monkeys and stuff like that is that when you force these dry fasts onto them, their lifespans will increase by like 25%. And it's just humongous life extension benefits, because you're repairing DNA and you're repairing all the damage that is done by our shit food and our crap water and our crap environments and all the domestication that happens. And there's so much, there's anti-cancer benefits, because what will happen is that a lot of like cancers cannot create their own water of life. They can't do it. So what, like I have like every now and then I'll get like a cyst on my back or something like that, because of like an ingrown hair or something like that. And what I will do is during my fasting is I'll just like fast. And what happens is your body will create like a Darwinian environment, because, now it really will start fighting itself over resources. Like, no, that's my resource. Fuck you. And, your cells will start doing that to each other. And that's why your senescent cells get killed off first. But because these like cancer cells and tumor cells and, like the, ingrown, like a cyst from like an ingrown hair or something like that, that like what'll happen is that since those cells are not able to, create their own water, they die, and my cyst will go away. And that, there's like, it's profound benefits to, to your cells and to your body by creating this Darwinian environment where your cells have to fight each other for resources, and the weak cells lose. And
so, sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead. No, I was done.
I was just gonna say, so like, what, the processes that are happening to fasting a lot of them are unique to fasting. Mm-hmm. But a lot of other elements you see in other realms, and it's just method of detoxification, right? So you see this in people who eat like a raw vegan diet, for instance. They are detoxing very effectively, but they're just severely depleting their system, right? And so obviously you're not going to dry fast for forever.
No.
You go back to eating, but one of the really profound things about eating an entirely raw diet, and when I mean raw, I'm talking about the animal foods, right? Not a vegan diet.
Yeah.
Is that you're promoting detox in the body while also supporting it at the same time, so that you continue to detox perpetually. And then, you know, something like a fast would then be like even like a sped up version of it, of course. And you're also getting those other processes and autophagy, which you wouldn't otherwise get. But you are, when I was saying, what like most people aren't healthy enough to fast, is that all of the fat specifically, both in the food and on your body itself, is protecting you from our environmental toxins.
Yeah.
And so all these things, which might have been very natural and beneficial to do, you know, historically, we have to understand that we live in the modern world. We can't like just go back to like, I'm just going to do exactly what a caveman did and it's going to work the same way. You know, we basically have to be a little fatter. And I don't mean like literally fat, but I just mean like fatter.
Yeah.
And specifically by loading the body up with these raw fats, raw butter, raw milk, what you're doing is you're providing a deposit site for toxins in your system, right? All those heavy metals, all those plastics, the seed oils, those things have to go somewhere, or they will go into your organs, right? They will go into your brain because they're looking for fat. And so when you do a very intense detox, whether it's through something that looks like a fast or like a more vegan type thing, you are shedding any kind of toxicity, especially anything that's stored. But then now you're very unprotected.
Yeah.
And so it's even important to kind of do a thing where it's like, you know, not like the traditional bulking and cutting from like, you know, lifting, but you're effectively doing the same thing with an entirely different intent. You go, okay, I'm going to be fatter during this time of the year, you know, and it's just easier, more natural to do it during winter. It's going to keep you warmer, that kind of thing. And then you would shed weight, which is at the same time shedding the stored toxins in your body fat. But then you need to replenish the stores when, you know, when time comes around again, to then protect yourself from the elements, because our world is so toxic. And the less protection you have, the more susceptible you are to damage from the toxicity.
And that's something that, you know, like you mentioned, like with physiognomy earlier, like when I notice that like someone is really, really fat, I can just tell immediately, oh, this person has a toxic diet. And because what your body, as you said, what your body will do in order to prevent these toxins from getting into your organs, from getting into your brain, is that it will it will try to capture that toxin and it will surround it with fat. And and so when you're this, and by the way, also part parcel with fluoride, that when your body, this is something your body will do with it, is it will try to put it into a try to put it into a hormone where it doesn't belong, and that's its way of dealing with this toxin, because fluoride's a toxin, iodine's not. And when you start detoxing, you're going to feel shitty. And like really shitty right away, because now all those toxins are getting released back into your bloodstream, and and they're hitting your organs, and eventually they're going to get filtered out through your kidneys, and so you need to drink a lot of water.
That's why eating tons of fat during that time is so crucial, because then you won't react the same way. It'll protect yourself. So like some people might be aware of, like, cilantro, for instance, is very effective at chelating mercury from it's effective at making awesome tacos.
You read my mind.
It is very effective at chelating mercury out of the system. And what you're basically doing is you're taking mercury that was kind of not like inert, but it was sort of like kind of sleeping in your system, and then you're just recirculating it through your system. And if it doesn't, like, you're going to feel like shit as it's doing that. And it also might not expel properly.
Yeah.
But if you, along with having a bunch of cilantro, had, like, for instance, like truly like homemade raw sour cream in your taco, then you're providing a fat source for yourself to poop it out. Basically, you're giving the mercury that's being liberated out of your system a deposit site, and then you can expel it much easier. Otherwise, you're going to feel like garbage as this stuff is going through your system. So there are ways to protect yourself, as opposed to just going pure, detox.
Yeah. And and I think this is because what I was thinking of calling this episode was called the individual praxis.
Okay.
Because I think Matt and I have beaten that dead horse of the collective praxis of what we're all supposed to be doing together, but we never actually got into like, okay, well, what are you supposed to be doing for yourself? And C.S. Lewis, my favorite Christian author from the 20th century, he's dead, unfortunately, but he died the same day JFK got shot, so he didn't even get his name in the paper or anything.
That's a shame.
It sucks. And he was such an excellent author. But one of the things, analogies he used for like morality is like ships and convoy. And it's like, okay, so where it's like in each individual ship, obviously it has to be able to run by itself, or else it's not going to reach its destination. And you also have to be working together, as a group, and you're not like bashing into each other or fighting each other or anything. But you also have to get to the correct destination. Like if you're a convoy that is set out for the Americas and you arrive in Africa, you did it wrong. It's like you have to understand where we're going as well. So it's not just like that you have to have your own ship together, that you also have to have your ship together with everybody else's ship. All of you actually have to arrive in the correct destination as well. It's like there are 3 tiers to end. Usually people kind of agree about how we should be working with each other, kind of, but they usually have like very little agreement about where we're supposed to go and like what we're supposed to be doing with ourselves. And so something where I see these that like that like our culture has come to the point where like we it's like anything I want to do, that's my choice, and that's what makes it legitimate. That's what makes it good. Like, no, the fact it was your choice doesn't mean it was a good choice. And just because value is subjective and all that, that does not make it good. And in fact, it can make it quite toxic. And so if you understand, like, this is morality is not just you having your own shit together, it's you having your shit together with your community, and all of you doing the right thing to get to the right destination of where you're supposed to go. And so and that has to begin with you, because if you're the one who doesn't have your shit together, you could imperil all the other ships in convoy.
Well, I mean, it's there's that element, but even if you just don't go past the individual, if your thing is like, I could do whatever I want, why would you choose to do bad stuff? Like, why would you harm yourself? That's not honoring yourself as a person. So
don't tell me how to live my life, Josh.
I mean, but that's kind of the thing, which is like,
and these are unhealthy people, and you see it. Like every time I see someone who says something like that, that's an unhealthy person. It's like that's going to come from nowhere.
I don't want to control someone else, but I want someone else to be in control of themselves and do it, actually take care of themselves. And so, we have this, the libertarian kind of idea where like, okay, eschewing collectivism and then it's individualism, but it's like, okay, then why do you as an individual suck?
Yeah.
Right? Because if you're like all about individualism, you should have something to show for it as an individual.
You should be an amazing individual.
You should be, you should
not some kid in your 20s.
You should be super healthy. You should, know a bunch of different languages. You should be able to play a bunch of different instruments. You should be very talented. And it's like, but people go, I could do whatever I want, and then I'm gonna sit back and fuck around and smoke weed and play video games and jerk off, and it doesn't contribute to a healthy individual. It doesn't contribute to a healthy collective. And as humans, we don't exist on our own, right? Family, community, that's how it has to be. If you want to be a hermit, that's fine, but that's not like the human experience.
That's not the natural order.
No, it's not. And so the hang up that you're getting, and where I think sort of libertarianism kind of goes astray, is that the only focus is on separation from the state. And it's like, which I support that, but it's like, to do what?
Yeah.
Now you have the freedom to do what, though?
This was something.
It's the freedom is not the goal. It's what the freedom allows you to do.
Yes.
And so like this like freedom absolutism it's like, but what's the point?
Seriously, like what good does
be
it do
free?
you?
Okay, like
It's like there are a lot of people that just want to be free to do bad things and be free from the consequences of their bad decisions, and they don't realize that the consequences of their bad decisions are what made them not free in the first place.
Right.
And and this is like a point that Matt made to like Angela McArdle in his debate. I thought he wrecked her. Where he asked her that exact question, like, freedom for what? She had no answer. No answer. It's like, I thought, I just like, boom, that should be such an easy question for her to answer. No answer for it.
Well, and so that's kind of the fundamental issue with anything that is like inherently like anti-authority.
Mm-hmm.
It's you have pinpointed a bad guy that gets in your way. There should be something on the other side of that authority that you're actually in the way from.
What are you trying to do? Yeah.
What are you trying to do? And most, like, it's very similar to like, a kid, like, hating their parents. It's like, oh, like my parents are so strict or mean or oppressive or something. And I mean, not that, everyone is a perfect parent, except they're usually trying to, I mean, there are certainly terrible parents, but your average parent is trying to do what they can to give their kids the best life possible. And they're often wrong,
very misguided,
but it's a lot of these things are just Chesterton's fence too, right? There's that element of it as well. It's like you don't know why this rule is even in place, and you might think that you'd be free if it wasn't there, but
it might be stopping you from doing something that could be very damaging to you,
right? And so I'm certainly not like, oh, the state needs to protect us or anything like that. But it's just like libertarianism is an incomplete idea. And so what you have is like this sort of process where I'm sort of I want to have this intellectual and moral superiority, which is like, I will never aggress on anyone and I'll be a better person than everyone else for it. And it's like,
it's so
there's no like true genuine like value in that at the end of the day, because it's that your lack of aggression should be then because of what it creates otherwise.
Like, what's the good that creates?
Right. What's the goal? What is, like, freedom is the means. What's the end?
Yes, it's not an end.
If your end is freedom, then that's it.
You've done something wrong.
Yeah. And so when you have like, and I mentioned this on King Pilled, like, last night I had a back and forth with Ace a bit until I went to sleep.
Oh boy. Did you learn your lesson?
No. But and the thing is, like, I like Ace, and I respect him, and he's very, very knowledgeable, right? He knows exactly like what he's talking about.
He really knows the theory.
Yes, he understands like the theory,
but not the praxis.
And so, but the thing is, we don't live in theory, right? It's like,
no, we don't.
Okay, so there's this wonderful theoretical place called Ancapistan or whatever, right? And it's like, man, wouldn't that be great? Would be. It would be if I had a fountain of raw milk that just like, never ran out. That'd be great. That's probably not going to happen. So I should probably find a cow instead, and learn how to graze it properly, and all that, and so that way I can have the milk. And so that sort of theory sort of sits in this place that's unachievable. And then you go, okay, so because most of these people recognize that it's not truly possible, we should still strive for that. But then they still get stuck. It's like, okay, and it has to come back around, because if you got to that place, what would you be doing with it? And it's a dog chasing its own tail. You wouldn't know what to do if you actually caught it.
Well, and this is a point I've made with Ace repeatedly, that that about the about what really is the individual praxis, that if you're doing all of these other behaviors which naturally lead to basically serfdom and slavery, it's like, is this really freedom? It's like it's like this is like the story of Chomsky in his interview where he was asked the questions like, okay, do you have the right to like sell yourself into slavery or something like that? He kind of laughs like, come on, no one's going to do that. But it's like, but no, actually they are. It's like a lot of these things that like these drugs, this sexual degeneracy, all these other things are bad for. They're really bad for your health and bad for all these earth and bad for your community, bad for gives you mental illness and all that stuff. It's like if you're calling these are just other forms of chains. Like this is not freedom. That are you free to sell yourself into slavery? Like okay, but let's not call that freedom. You know what I mean? It's like it kind of seems like it is a contradiction in terms. And when I argue with Ace about kind of my archotropism framework, which kind of proves on the theoretical level why these things cannot possibly lead to freedom and should not be classed as that. It's just like something he has no ability to deal with. Is that like these things that are just other kinds of chains.
So when you're stuck in the theory and you're kind of framed as this. There's something that we want to attain, and there's something in the way, right? So there's this like this is the state is the boogeyman, and so everything
and that helps them ignore all these other things that are in the way.
Right. So all of the focus is on the state itself. How do we, destroy the state or go around the state, or when Ace or like Malice talks about anarchism is a relationship, not a place or something. I mean, I see what you're saying, but like nothing about that is inherently like anarchistic, because those same interactions can happen in any system. Like, they're not just like specifically anarchistic. They could belong to.
They have and by that measure, they have quite a lot of anarchism in North Korea.
Sure.
Like come on, man.
Yeah. And so, if all that you're focused on is this state idea, then everything else in your life sort of takes a back seat to the state. And so that state has all the power over you in ways even like more than it otherwise would have, because you keep like thinking about it. And I mean, don't get me wrong, like I support agorism, I support like counter economics, because we're not going to destroy the state. So like as an individual, like as a man, it's like you really have like from the political framework, I think the vast majority of people really just have like two jobs. One is to disobey the state to the limit, to the ability that you can. So that means. Can you hear me?
Hello? Yeah, you froze. You said two responsibilities, and then
you have two responsibilities, kind of like in the sort of political framework. And I was saying one is to disobey the state, right? To reject all the mandates and engage in counter economics and avoid things that lead to taxation as much as possible, and to build things that allow outside the system. And the other thing is to just be as good and as a person as you can. I don't mean like be nice. I mean like improve yourself and develop your abilities and develop relationships, and be a good man, be a good husband, be a good father, and create a world that like creates space between you and your community from the state. Beyond that, like people focused on all this other theoretical stuff is just a complete waste of time. Arguing about all these like minutia and all this theory stuff, like there's a large similarity between like libertarians and communists, is that they believe in things that like don't exist, right?
Yeah.
And so that's the classic communist rebuttal on the internet, where it's like, go read theory, go read Marx, and it's like, go literally do something. Stop reading. Your reading is not helping you.
And invariably, it's funny that these the communists and the libertarians, they end up looking quite a lot alike.
They do. They do.
It's like because they have the same unhealthy habits, that have led them to be unfree.
And yeah, so you can look at an anarcho-communist and an anarcho-capitalist,
Mm-hmm.
and if you
Same
switch
neck
out,
beard,
yeah,
same beer gut.
if you switch out the hammer and sickle for I don't know what
the Gadsden flag.
Yeah, the Gadsden flag, like it's the same shit.
Same person.
It's the same person. It's the person who's like, I just want to be able to do whatever I want to do. Mm-hmm. And it's like in whatever your utopia is, you have to actually have a thing that you want to use it for. And because those theoretical concepts, even if they were attainable somewhere really down the line, you would need to do a bunch of shit to actually get there. Your best bet at getting closer to like any goal is to improve yourself. So if you won't do that, one, why do you even think that you're capable of achieving anything more? But then why would I give any credence to what it is that you're saying?
Yes. It's like your whole life is a mess. I can take one look at you and like, okay, your skin is very paisley and sickly looking. You're fat. You have acne. You have all these little things that tell me like something's wrong. Okay, it does not look the way it's supposed to look, and and it probably hasn't worked for a long, long time. And yet you're telling me you know how to engineer society by not engineering it at all or whatever, and that all of these other things that like, oh, you should have be free to do all these like these things that lead to serfdom that led to you getting kind of put having a state in the first place. Like you're free to be a weak pussy, you're free to not exercise, you're free to not eat right, and you're free to just mess up your own life and assume that that's not going to have blowback on you or other people or your and I think that's just utter naivete. And now because of the archetropism framework, it doesn't even stand up to theory anymore. And I think, and that's something that a lot of them have had trouble with, was when I start harping on what I'm calling the individual praxis, like having a good religion, a good spiritual health, having a good mental health, because you're not having all of these bad things in your environment, and understanding that there's a physical, there is a gut brain axis, that this thing exists.
It's so deeply fundamental.
Yes,
this is why
you're not going to be free.
Yeah, this is why I harp on nutrition so much, and why I've kind of, I don't know if I say distance myself, but left the sort of previous framework, which is like macros and calories and like gaining weight and losing weight, and that idea is that itself does not address the fundamental aspects of deep nourishment and proper bacteria and gut health. And that has to be prioritized because, like you said, the gut and brain are directly connected. They call the brain, the gut, the second brain. Your neurotransmitters, your serotonin, your dopamine are created in your gut by the bacteria. And
your B12, which runs your entire metabolism.
Right. And so it's such a fundamental like aspect to it. And so the idea that like you could go through your life properly, think well, treat other people well, all of that is being hindered by your like shit taking care of yourself. And it is, there's a reason why they call it degeneracy, because it makes you degenerate, right? It harms you, it destroys you, it breaks you down.
You go back to the barbarianism we came from.
And well, the barbarians were a hell of a lot stronger.
Oh, I mean the Romans.
Yeah.
They were not.
Yeah. But
the cavemen were not barbarians. It's like the cavemen were not the barbarians. We're talking about the city slickers.
Sure. But it's crazy. These people want less safety, right? And they want more freedom. And what they're doing is making themselves weaker, which means they actually need more safety. Right. And the thing is, that safety might have to come in from a private entity and not the state, but you're now going to be a slave to the private entity, right? You're going to need something outside of yourself to such an extent that you are now extremely dependent. And so you are less adept at handling freedom, and you're less capable.
All freedom has to start with the individual praxis.
Yeah, it has to, because otherwise otherwise, as you are weakening the, there's a reason why, like, they call it like culling the herd, right? Like that weak bison, like that's it's gonna get
You don't
taken
want to let
down.
him reproduce.
It's
Those
gonna
weak
get taken
senescent,
down.
that's the senescent cells that when you're fasting away, they don't make it for exactly the reasons that
Right.
because weakness doesn't make it. Weakness
And,
and usually weakness will turn into cancer.
and so, like, taken to this extreme, the logical end of this is like eugenics, which is not,
Not good.
exactly what I know. I'm not
Yeah.
condoning like a like
Yeah.
force, eugenics, but eugenics just means like positive reproduction. It just means good reproduction. So if you marry someone because you think they're attractive and they look healthy and they're smart and they're funny,
eugenesis, yeah.
eugenics, right?
Yeah.
And so, like, but it really, and this is, it's interesting, like as I changed my diet, my focus became less on myself and more on my children, which didn't even exist yet, because it's what are you building? What are you creating? What is the legacy that comes from what you do? And if you live your life in this sort of like hedonistic, in the moment, right, high time preference,
Yes,
pleasure-based lifestyle, you don't build anything. You don't create anything. And what you're instead doing is you're
creating your own chains.
Yeah, you're taxing the system, right? As opposed to building it up and developing its potential, its capability. You are now instead depleting it, and then the more depleted you become, and the more that you hurt your system, the more you are putting yourself and your collective in chains. And so people need to be able to be more independent, and that is honestly, to a certain extent, completely irrelevant with whether or not a state exists. You need to be worried about building yourself up so that you would be able to do anything if the state didn't exist, or you'd be able to get rid of the state yourself. But the the people in 1776 were like, what, man, I'm just gonna like, hang out and just jerk off, and I'm playing this game, whatever their version of video games were. You go to the
they
to
grew weed
harbor.
back then.
No,
They
I
knew
know,
how
I
to
know.
grow. They had
Okay,
hemp back then, but they didn't smoke it.
So yeah, not only that, but weed back then did not have anything like the THC that it does now.
Oh yeah.
But it's even then it's the mindset of it, right? Like cocaine makes you super productive, right? But it'll still degenerate you. So like, I mean, you could probably use it in a way that helped you, but probably not. And so it's not just like the specific thing itself, but it's the intent behind it. And it's kind of like the overall, it's the holistic thing. It's not just like this one element. Everything's connected. Like the individual is connected to every other individual, and that's what creates the collective. But you're still an individual, right? So you have to take the forest and the tree and take both of them into account, not focus on one or the other. But as you are worried about only the collective, only the forest, and then you let yourself as the individual be like, just, fall apart, then you are not contributing to the collective. And it's not a good use of time and resources to what effectively is like a mental masturbation, and like sitting and complaining about the state and going back and forth about all this theory and ideas. Do get something done in the world that really has nothing to do with what the state's doing, so that as you can push the state back, like you're pushing the state back as you are actually getting somewhere, as opposed to you haven't left your couch and you're like, back up, state. It's like, why don't you go out and spread out whatever it is you're building that will inherently push back the state, because your reliance on it will become minimal, and you're developing something.
This is why I like C.S. Lewis's Ships and Convoy example so well. It's like they only want to talk about where we're going. Because the problem is, like they think that they're going to be like shitheads and have all of these other bad things, and they're not going to be working together, and they're not going to have this cohesive strategy or anything. Like they don't want to take care of their own individual ship first. And once they start getting that done, then they can't bother to work together with other people properly. And because like that's like the main thing the whole holds libertarians back, but doesn't hold communists back, is that the libertarians all think that they don't need a leader, and therefore they don't have one.
Right.
And that makes them inherently inefficient. But the commies, on the other hand, like understand that we have to have a leader who gets everything done for us, and we help him out, and then he kills us all after we're done.
Isn't that fascinating though?
Yeah.
That goes against the stated beliefs of each side, because communists define anarchy as no hierarchy, and libertarians define anarchy as no rulers. But the communists end up developing a certain hierarchy, and then the libertarians pretty much just become ruled by they're
ruled by their passions.
Yeah, right. They become slaves to their own like hedonistic passions, and they become ruled by it. And when you kind of like realize that, it's fascinating when you get to the point when you're like, wait, democracy is bad. We'd probably be better off with a king. How did I get here?
It's like you only got to get one of them right, as opposed to like half the population right.
Yeah, that's fascinating, right? And then like if that one really sucks, well, shit, we know who to blame, and we know who to, get rid of, as opposed to, quite literally the entire swamp, so to speak. It's like, you cut off one head and two more grow.
Yeah. I mean, in the Bible, there were 21 kings, and 6 of them were pretty good.
Yeah.
As like the other 21 really, I mean, the other like 15 sucks. But hey, I mean, that's still like a 1 in 3 average. It's pretty good compared to democracy, where it's like 95% are bad.
Yeah.
So you're still beating it. It's still beating the odds.
It's a fascinating like path that it's almost like it's not just something that any of us did. There's like a logical journey through these different points, because you start somewhere and you're like, oh, here's an idea, and then you spend time here and then you see the pitfalls, and then like it sort of evolves in this kind of natural progression. And it's interesting to see like these tendencies of different types of people, how they go. And it's like the Lolbert to Authright sort of pipeline. It's like it's kind of a funny one. But and there's a reason why religion is so connected to all this, because to believe in God is to believe in, quite literally, like the king, right? Like the king of all kings. And so it is inherently bowing to an authority that is a benevolent authority, because we need leader, right? You need a leader. You need something. You need something to strive towards, right? There needs to be this, like an example, right? Yeah. There needs to be an example. There needs to be a leader. There needs to be a structure. There needs to be a hierarchy. And it really, there's a reason why they say like libertarians, like, it's kind of like, for high school boys or something. Because it's just like, oh yeah, like parents are stupid, don't need any of this shit.
Anti-authority, individualism, no collectivism. It's like anytime I hear the word collectivism, I'm just like, okay, mute you. You're gone. Like I immediately assume they're like 18. And I'm like, I don't care what you think at all. And like that, what you just mentioned there, like with the Bible and religion and us needing a good example, is like the Bible has all like that message about like the individual praxis and like start with yourself. This is like the main reason why Christianity produces good results, as that it has such a good emphasis on how you're supposed to live in order to get good results. And it will literally say like your body is a temple of the Holy Spirit, so don't put shit in it. It's like, so keep it pure. It's like,
so that's an interesting element, right? Yeah. One thing I was going to say is that, like, okay, so if the nap is this like the nap is a libertarian God. It's the one commandment, right? It's not 10, it's 1. All that is, it's trying to sum up basically in some ways the 10 commandments, but it's so focused on it's just don't do. But what do you do? I got an instruction of don't do, but then what do I do? And so something like the Bible has, here's what you don't do, here's what you should do. And it's fascinating.
Even the Ten Commandments, it has shoulds in it.
Right. Yeah. And so
honor your father and mother. Honor the Sabbath, et
so,
cetera, et cetera.
It's interesting as my political sort of journey has evolved. So has my my perspective on religion, and so
because you're thinking clearer now because you got the nutrition.
Right. I used to be pretty like anti-religion and like specifically anti-Christian because, you know, growing up in America, like that's like what you're exposed to. But then like the Christianity that you see is like,
it's all the Protestant version, which is
like you know, it's like it's Joel Osteen, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But then like beyond that, like as I started to see certain values in people who were Christian, who were, you know, standing up for what's going on in the the world right now, and seeing such an element of scripture and talk of various concepts and you know, really like it really was last year when I was like, oh, I see Satan now. I see Satan now, and I see like what's sort of required to, you know, oppose it. But talking about like the body is like a temple, right? It's the vessel for your soul, and seeing a lot of Christians who didn't actually exemplify that at all. You
see why it didn't work.
Yeah. And so it's like, whether it's libertarianism, Christianity, any type of structure that involves beliefs or ideas or values, there's expressions that look better than others. And so where before I was seeing a pattern of, okay, these Christians, like they're against what's going on in the world right now, but they still are slobs. And they don't take care of themselves at all. And then starting to see like different types of Christians. I start to see different types of libertarians, right? And then you go, there's something here that has value. And it's kind of trying to wade through all the other shit to get to actually like those nuggets that are good. And to like, this point, now I've met a bunch of Christians who I admire how they live their life and the type of people that they are. And they eat very, good diets, and they really are seeking this like all-encompassing approach to all that is good, right? It's it's that the concept of truth and good is what kind of juxtaposed with evil is what I'm like, I kind of always sort of believed in God in the back of my mind, kind of a thing. Like as a little kid, I talked to God, right? I prayed, even though I wasn't raised in any religion. It's just like a natural thing that I did. And then through like culture and growing up, like, around Los Angeles and no people who are religious, very liberal culture. It's just sort of like, that's dumb. That's stupid. I probably was,
and then you see how all that turned out.
I probably was like an atheist,
the godless left turned into
for like
the
a year
left.
when in my early 20s or something. But I was mostly kind of in this just like general, yes, there's something, I don't know.
Yeah.
But when you see the dichotomy of good and true and then evil and this like inversion of reality, you go, oh man, this makes sense. Like I get this now. And while like I don't consider myself a Christian, and I honestly don't know if I would ever become one. It would be such like a unexpected sort of path for myself, but again, who knows? I would certainly have to finish reading the Bible before I would even be.
It's not even just reading the Bible; it's studying it. That's I make this point all the time that
what I'm saying is like, I haven't even read it yet. So like to call myself, it would be completely undeserved to even call myself a Christian. But
like, it's going to start
all I'm really, I'm
like,
really like concerned with is finding truth and what is good, and in all forms, right? So it's like, I want to be a better version of myself, right? I want to, be healthy, and I want to be happy, and I want to be able to work hard and provide and protect for my wife and kids, and build a community and a legacy. And like, that's like what my focus is. And so anything else, it's like, what are you going to do with anything? And so it's going towards the good, right? That's kind of like the mindset. And so there's an element there that, okay, so something with the nutrition thing, right? We're talking about eating in a certain way to like pass it on to my children. And so I also want to build a world that provides good values, right? I want to pass on everything that is good to my children. I want them to grow up with a good structure and a good value system and good habits and good lifestyle. And
Stop right there.
Yeah.
Because what was done, that right there is the most important thing of our generation. The reason being is this was not what was not done for us.
Right.
Our parents did not pass on to us a healthy society. They passed us on to one that was very sick, very unhealthy, had with these poor diets, had very indebted, very spiritually sick and spiritual and agnostic, and everything about our civilization right now we're seeing manifested in how sick and unhealthy it is. And this, because this, these values, everything good was not passed on to us, and this is something that I think we need to pass on to the next generation so that we do not repeat the mistakes that our parents made. Right. We do not repeat the infliction of the problems that were done to us. We don't do to them, to our kids, what was done to us. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, it's just like
you're saying you wanted to pass it on.
Yeah, like whatever is good, I want to move towards that and pass that on to my children, and just like it again, just support them with what is good. And so it's talking about good food, good relationships, good values, good lifestyle. Like, I'm not going to put any of my kids in school, right? Like I would never put my kid in anything that resembles like a proper school, right?
Yeah.
I would like to build a community where my kids and the other kids can grow like together, right? Mixing various ages but like not so much book learning, though there's obviously that process too, but it's like being raised milking the cows and like learning how to build shit with me and that type of process where actually learning real things, real, like again going back to like the whole theory thing, like it's really important in our world for people to learn ideas and these more abstract concepts and the way to apply things to things that are more involved. But people lived for a very long time just basically understanding how to get food and build shelter. And as long as you had food and shelter and you had, your family around you, and, we're tribes, so we're like 100 people who were all cousins and shit. Like that's all that you need to be incredibly happy. And again, we understand we're in modern times. And so it's like, yeah, my kids are going to read books and they're going to understand how to do, understand math and science and these different elements. But the foundation has to be just like in the real human things. The real human things and the skills, and not just the skills, but what the lessons that doing that hard work sort of that gives you, the appreciation, the connection, the satisfaction and reward from doing like real meaningful work. Like I have never felt as accomplished in my entire life doing anything as I have working on a farm. It's like really? Like when you're like like picking like produce and stuff, and then like you're washing and preparing it to like then go give to people to eat. It's like that's money is nothing. The only reason why money exists is because people had to eat. You know what I mean? And so it's that more basic value that you're providing. And again, whether you're calling that anarchism or not, you're going around the state. Right? Especially if you get to a place where you're not exchanging money for the food, but you're exchanging some good for another good. Now there's no taxes involved, right? Now there's no state, there's no cash changing hand, there's none of that shit involved. That is, whether you want to call it anarchism, agorism, right? That's counter economics. Whatever it is that is the praxis. That is the elemental removing the state from your life. Do that instead of like arguing about some more convoluted shit that really doesn't actually have anything that you can accomplish or do.
Yeah, it's like I've been saying, hey, your real freedom has to start with yourself. And it's like this is building your wealth, building power, building influence. This Jason Stapleton's message, but it also has to be like part of wealth is building your own community.
Yeah,
With
of
your
course.
people, it's building building your own body. And not treating it with, what are basically the equivalent of chains. You're not. It's like what good is your freedom if you're sick? As like
Right.
what good is your freedom if you're mentally ill? What good is it if your kids are mentally ill? Because I don't know, maybe they're born out of wedlock. You marry marry the father or mother of your child. It's like that kid's going to grow up like with a whole life of deprivation because of that, and like you violated that kid's rights. And that's something that I feel is not there are all these things right here that are just that the individual praxis is where freedom begins. If you don't have this, you have no hope of getting to Ancapistan. So, and saying that, okay, the state is the only thing that is my definition of freedom. I mean, that's a jaundiced and sickly definition of freedom. In my opinion, this is like, I mean, like you're like, this is like a on its deathbed version of liberty, which I was like, I just reject it out right now. It's like, no, like freedom is like one part negative, but the other part is positive. And this is where I feel like the left has actually changed my mind. Is that I used to think freedom was purely a negative thing, and now I'm like, no, it's actually both. It's not just they think it's only positive,
Right.
and so okay, they're wrong. That's only positive is also negative, but no, it really is both. And because if you don't have, it's freedom to do what,
Right.
it's like, okay, the absence of aggression, so you can do what, just put yourself into a different kind of chains.
Yeah, I mean, so, think about it. Like, and this is one of those the kind of patterns that you notice is okay. There's all those like libertarian guys, and they're like very overweight and out of shape, and they just like they have a million guns though, right? And it's like one, I'm all about the guns. Please have all the guns, and you can only use one at a time.
Yeah.
And two, when you have to use it, you don't just stand there. When it's actually time to use the guns,
You need to be moving.
you gotta like, are you actually training, right? And then again, that's one element of it. Can you physically do what it takes to fend for yourself, to build shelter, to work the land, to provide food? Like, can you do the manual labor that's required for this, libertarian utopia? Because all the guns do are providing this like very basic deterrent to the state. And again, if you can deter the state to do what, right? It's the to do what, which is like the crux of this whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
And which is where like, they'll say like, well, that's up to you. And it's like, you can, if you only can think of politics like that far, then
The fluoride's gotten to you.
Yeah, well, like yes, like you've missed the point that like you don't just put politics in a box and it's like over here, right? So the what's
2020 should have taught you that this thing's not going to stay in a box.
well, so like I told you, I had that back and forth with Ace last night, and him and Stefan had like a really long thing. Do you know Stefan?
There's quite a few Stefans.
I don't know. I don't remember. Anyways, he's sort of like. He's somewhere where we are.
Okay.
Yeah. And so
quite a few of them. Go ahead.
Yeah. And so yeah, he was bringing up sort of like the biological aspect of this, and it's like humanity we cannot allow for this worldview that you're talking about. So it's kind of like a waste of time. Let's talk about something that is actually practical, right? Not something that is only purely theoretical, that like cannot exist in reality. And so Ace and I started going back and forth because he said you shouldn't derive your politics from biology. and I was like, okay.
It's like saying you shouldn't derive your theory from the natural world. I'm like, I'm sorry.
It's like, you can't separate politics from biology, right? And it's politics are going to inform culture. Culture is going to inform politics. It's all one connected thing. You can't like remove this part of the equation. And so if you're focusing on politics, and this is what the right has started to learn finally, is that the culture war comes first, right? You have to have people who have values in something, and not just more of this more third person political sphere, right? Because like, we are the culture, we aren't the politics. We are trying to make the politics benefit our culture, so we need to approach it from the culture side. And that's why, like, Virginia happened. That's why New Jersey almost happened, and so that's starting to change. But when you remove the interconnectivity of all these elements, you destroy them kind of completely. You can't address politics separate from culture or biology, because they're all going to inform each other. And so the focus, if you work on, like, think of, okay, if your politics is, I want to be decentralized and independent and free, your biology better be, I have the ability to be decentralized, independent, and free.
Well, how is your like your gay married, whatever, going to defend his poppy fields with his machine guns?
Right.
If he's got horrible mental illness,
right.
He's fat as fuck, and he's just like sickly and ugly, so he couldn't even get gay married because he's so sickly and ugly.
Well,
he's like, how is this supposed to work?
That meme is quintessential Lolbert, right?
I know.
It's like, that's you've summed up your ideology as to that. And it's like, great. What does that actually contribute to?
It's like, they don't even have the cultural awareness, because they're so isolated from people, and they're in their own little bubble, that they don't recognize that that was supposed to be a little bit of a joke. But like, the fact that you led that, like the people you just led that to, is like, they're just like, oh, those are like three things I really don't like. Well, except maybe the guns, but like, right, in your hands, not so much.
Right, and so that's the thing, right? Is that, like, if your focus is on those things, what you're saying is you're basically just with the progressive far left.
Yeah, that's all you did.
And they're not going to let you have the freedom that you want, and so it's completely missing how things actually work. It's being naive to the reality of the situation. Mm-hmm. And so I don't care if it's the state or it's not the state, or, it's anarchism or it's private entity, like, whatever takes us towards the good is whatever it takes us. It's like these things are all tools.
They're means to the end.
Yeah, they are the means. They're not the end, though. You need to figure out what your end is, or the means. Like, if you don't actually have an end, then the means are completely useless. Like, if
all you have is the end, and your means are just shitty, why are you focusing so much on the end?
Yeah, I mean, if you had the most amazing garage with every tool, every power tool, everything you needed, and someone even gave you all the raw materials and like wood and all kinds of stuff, but you didn't have anything you wanted to build, what good does it do, right?
And if you have these incredible visions of Ancapistan utopia, and you're like broke, debt-ridden, and you're mentally ill, you're disconnected from your family, and your only friends are online, you're not married, and you masturbate every night, it's like, and you eat shit, so you can barely think 10 steps, that you can barely think 2 steps ahead, much less 10. And it's like, what is this? It's like, how can you possibly expect this is going to lead to that? And you can say, oh, well, I have my theory. And like, no, I'm sorry, that theory doesn't work. That right there does not work, because you don't. If you are not in, functional order, if you're not observing the individual praxis of, respecting your biology, understanding that this thing controls your mind, understanding that, your mind and your spirit, have to be in like working order through, through religion and like, the worship of God and all that. If you are not understand that these things are all interconnected, how do you possibly expect to achieve or much less maintain, you
So,
know,
so
a order?
what I think is like one of the clearest signs, and this is kind of where you find a lot of libertarians sort of like, you know, very much like among this like progressive left, is just like, are you happy? Like, are you truly healthy and happy? Because most of these people aren't. And so what they're doing is they're deflecting the blame onto the state, right?
Mm-hmm.
You really have, like, until you can take control of yourself, make yourself healthy, and just be in a happy place, you will always be this like rebellious teenager kind of mode where you're just sort of angry at the world.
Mm-hmm.
And that is no place to build anything from.
You're going to be Archie Flowers.
Oh,
It's like, exactly. I mean, he is the poster boy for everything we're talking about.
Yes, he really is like the worst.
He is like, no, he is exactly the logical conclusion of what a lot of what this, you know, theory only thing is, you know, with that neglects the individual praxis.
He's the like the physical personification of weakness.
Yes.
Right. And so everything is no authority, no force, no coercion, no state. It's just like a little bubble.
Clearly mentally ill.
Right. Shielding himself from anything. And it's just like, dude, you need help.
You need serious work.
Yeah.
It's like, you should not be involved in any party at all. It's like, you need serious help.
He needs to spend the next 5 to 10 years just eating a shit ton of meat and probably learn how to hunt or farm, or so he needs to do manual labor.
Start with going to church.
Yeah.
Start with some good diet. Build your way up to where you can start fasting, and you probably he's gay, but okay, so that's meeting a woman and having a kid is kind of off the table, but at least try to meet somebody. Maybe reconnect with your family somehow. And but geez Louise, buddy. Yes, it's like, you can't possibly think that anything that you're doing is going to work if you are not in working order.
And I saw this with I moved out of California just this year, right? I lived in California for my entire life, for 30 years, and what I would see in my friends is basically all my friends were like somewhere on the left for the most part, like 99% of them.
Yeah.
And so some of them are more, Joe Biden, some of them are more Bernie Sanders, but they're somewhere in that realm. And the ones who were furthest to the left, the most into the social issues, the most into left-wing anarchism, the more completely miserable they were as people.
Yeah.
The more they.
Have you noticed that with our group too? The happier the individual, the more well put together the individual.
Yeah,
the more they have their life together, the more they run our team.
Yeah, and that's again, like on Campo, they kept talking about the pudding. I never came into any of this being like, I want to be this ideology, because what you're first going is like, oh, what does this thing mean? What is this? And I spent a lot of time worried about the ideas themselves, and I was like, wait a second. Let me stop worrying about ideas. Let me just see what the ideas create. What's the product?
Yes.
What's the pudding? The proof is in the pudding.
Proof is in the pudding.
Show me the goods. I don't care your marketing thing. Show me the goods. Yes. I don't care what the sign says.
This is exactly.
Open the box. Let me use it, and let me see let me put it in my hands. And
this is something I've this is a point. If you ever want to win a debate with Ace, this is the point you make: is that good things work. Okay, right. If your ideology has not been working, something's wrong. Right. And this is like, I'm not arguing from a consequentialist point of view. I'm in a sense I am, but what I'm actually doing is saying that you cannot separate theory, input from output, and that's like the central flaw in every single argument he makes is that he will always try to separate input from output. I'm like, you can't do that. That's wrong. It's like that doesn't work, and it's not moral to just ignore the output of your actions. You have to you have to take them both, and so if you're and a really quick and easy way to see what's working and why is to just say, skip to the end, see what this thing is actually producing, and then try to reverse engineer backwards and see how can I make this better.
So there's a hilarious meme that it's the political compass. And so you have like the cry face Wojak, and it's saying like, no, that wasn't real communism for like the upper left. No, that wasn't real anarchy. No, that wasn't real capitalism. And then in off right, it was real monarchy and it was glorious. I thought I mean, right? It's like it's the only thing that like
worked.
It works. It works.
For all of its problems, it worked.
And not just that, but it creates a people who have like there's a pride and there's a reverence, right? Everything is always like, oh, that was a mess and this was terrible. It's like, nah, this was epic.
Yes,
and it's
great.
It's just telling that all these other things don't work because they never work. And like what Lindy means.
No,
you never heard Lindy. So Lindy is a term that basically says that the longer something has been around, the better it is because it's stuck around. So you can kind of directly correlate how long it's been around. To how successful it is. And it comes from, there was like for in New York, there's like a deli called like Lindy's Deli, and whatever, like the critics would meet there to talk about the Broadway plays. I could be butchering this, but I'm kind of close to it. And basically, the longer that a play had been running, they realized that the more likelihood it would be to continue running to be successful. So something that is Lindy is something that's been around for a really long time and has worked. So if there's a brand new thing, it might work, but we just really have no way of knowing. But the thing that's been around forever and always works, that shit's going to keep working.
Yeah. And what you can usually tell is like, the thing that really works, if your new thing is pretty dang similar to the thing that really, really works, it's like,
maybe you could improve it. Okay. Yeah, you could make modifications
but like the farther away it is, it's like, that's usually not a good thing.
Yeah. And so it's going back to like the kind of physical health and like diet thing. Show like if your diet works, let me look at you. Let me see what it creates. All I need to do is I just need to see, and then that will tell me whatever I need to know. And what's fascinating,
show me what's on the inside too.
Yeah. And so like people, whether they want to admit it or not, they can see it, right? Which is why like you show some before and after, like the whatever diet program they have, like the commercials for it, whether it be the Jenny Craig on TV, whatever bullshit, or like some nutrition thing on Instagram. They show the before and after, and people go, "Oh, it worked." If you just show pictures of food, they're like, "Okay," and then you go, "Oh shit, it worked! I saw the end result. Now I'm bought in. Now I want the thing." That's proof. There's the pudding. I'm in. But again,
like before the individual praxis, you're kind of like this fat Archie Flowers kind of guy. After the individual praxis, you're kind of like Josh Rayner and Poppy Libs.
Look, I can't promise those results. I
can. Oh, I can. I'll make that promise. Yeah, if you start observing your spiritual obligations, if you start observing your community obligations, if you start observing your biological obligations, you're going to get pretty dang close to us. It's like, that's just how that works. And I mean, this is purely engineering. This is purely functional. Things that work often tend to work together. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. There is an integration of these elements, which is why like You know,
Order is self-promoting. Order always promotes more order.
Right. And so
chaos always promotes more chaos too.
Yeah.
So it goes it works in reverse too.
It's when, like, you know, at this point, I don't separate my diet from my politics. Right. I don't say it's and everything that's in between there. My values, my beliefs, you know, whether it be religion or whatever it is, it's all one fundamental thing. Everything affects the other thing. And it's no surprise that last year I'd always eaten very healthy, but, you know, a lot, you know, high quality foods, but you're still eating foods that are less ideal for the human body. And occasionally it's like you slip in a little bit of junk kind of thing. As I really decided to like purify my diet and not stray from it, like to any extent, like, you know, zero, all of my beliefs changed. I purified myself in one way and it purified myself in every other way, right? Like it all contributes to the same thing. Yeah. As I heal internally, physically, I heal mentally, I heal emotionally, I heal spiritually. You can't separate it, and everything has to be an intentful, concerted approach, you know, with like a full spectrum approach. Because if you don't do that, you're certainly leaving chips on the table. But not only that, is you could be really, really missing on certain elements, which break the whole rest of the system down. And so to think about, you know, and I always come back to this, you know, like I said, like the people who were like the most radical left, worrying about social justice issues and always talking about this thing over there and that, it's always what's over there. What's over there? There's a problem that needs to be fixed over there. It's like, no. There's a problem right here that really needs to be fixed, that you are deflecting that responsibility on and removing that from like your mindset. You are preoccupying yourself with something else, and your individual praxis needs serious work before that has any business being addressing. And what you realize that if you actually address the individual praxis, you don't feel the same way about that problem over there, because you don't need to manufacture it in order to have something to distract you to solve over there.
Well, not just that, is that, you know, when you fix your lesser problems, you end up getting better problems. It's like there's such a thing as a good problem to have. You know, like a bad problem to have is too little money. A good problem to have is too much money. Yeah. And, you know, it's like, which one would you prefer? And but the you say, and so once you start fixing these lower order problems that were holding you back, your Overton window of problems kind of moves up, and you end up getting a lot better problems to have.
And not just that, but like it's a good problem to, you know, a problem is something that needs solving, right? It doesn't mean that it's bad. And so when you solve the problem, the payoff benefits you, right? And so instead of, you know, if we're thinking of like, there's like a median axis and you have above the line and below the line. When you're below, you're solving your problems just to get, like, you're trying to dig yourself out of a hole, right? You're trying to just get to the surface of the water, right? You're trying to you're trying to breathe. And then we're talking about, okay, now you're climbing the ladder to the helicopter that's like, you know, saving you from drowning in the middle of the ocean, whatever. And so it's that shift from getting yourself out of a situation to then getting yourself into something, to keep ascending to something better, something greater, and working towards something that is, you know, productive, building something, contributing to something greater.
And it's like, and, you know, I really think this is, you know, exactly where it has to start, because all of your biggest problems, and people don't want to recognize this, is that your biggest problems are going to begin with yourself. As it's like,
they always do. They always do.
It's like, yeah, it's like, this is the problem with the focus on the individual, and one of the central flaws of liberalism is that, you know, it gives you this almost self-centeredness to where you are almost, you know, deifying yourself, and but you're not, and you're having all of these different issues, and you know, always trying to find some way of exerting blame for that, or shifting that off of you somehow.
Well, it's like you think if you were to deify yourself, you would take better care of yourself.
Yeah, you treat yourself like a god. I mean, is a
Right.
god going to eat Cheetos or something like that? No,
Yeah.
no. That's not what you feed a god. You feed him like grapes and wine and fine wine or something like that. Or I don't
Sure.
know. But they like you would actually take care. You would actually do good things to it.
Yeah.
And and this is I think we're rounding out the conversation here about but I think this is the single most important point. If you want liberty, you need to start. Yeah, if you want freedom, you need to start with the individual praxis. You have no business being a part of the collective praxis. Or even bothering to ask yourself the question of where are you going until you fix your own life. You got to fix your diet. You got to fix your mental environment. You got to fix your spiritual health. You got to clean up your environment around you of all these toxins and everything else. You have to you have to begin repairing these bonds with your community and your family. And only then should you really start engaging in the collective practices. This is where why it took me like 28 years to start getting involved, is that I understood and almost just instinctively, it's like I have all these other problems I need to solve for myself before I can even think about getting involved in politics. Like I gotta get my job in order. I gotta get my income in order. I gotta get my health in order. I gotta find a wife. I gotta start getting in on the family. And I found out I'm probably going to be a dad. That in the in the past 2 weeks. And so it's like, now that I've finally gotten all of that stuff in order, now is the time for me to really start getting involved in politics, not just in podcasting and spreading my message, but actually like getting stuff done.
Right.
And when I start getting stuff done, it's like I'm not starting by running for president. I'm starting like just run for the local office. Get some basic stuff. Get some basic stuff done for people. Build my own credibility there, and and this is the way it all should be done. Like you're not going to just like expect that wait around and do nothing and maybe spread the message a little bit to some equally unhealthy people, and not just like biologically unhealthy, but like morally unhealthy and spiritually unhealthy too. It's like these people that cannot possibly accept your message. They're not even they're not even close to ready for it. And but if you do, so you always has to start with you. It has to start with the individual praxis taking care of everything. And go ahead, round us out.
It's funny. I like sometime last year, I started writing this thing, and I never really developed it any further. But it was basically the idea that like our modern the people today that like push the most for collectivism, which you're seeing like mostly from the left, is
domestication, as they call it.
Sure, is actually a form of like toxic individualism, right? And it's so these people, they're super narcissistic, and so they're really, really focused on labeling themselves. It's like, okay, I'm non-binary, Black, Muslim, communist, like all these like
disabled,
random, yeah,
with rickets.
It's like focusing on all these labels that put you in a collective, attach you to something, because you as a person are actually so narcissistic and obsessed with yourself that you have to give yourself all of these categories that give yourself value, right? And so it's like an inversion. And then on the other side, what you're
hierarchy.
what you're seeing today on the other side for like the modern individualism is like actually a toxic relationship with collectivism, is that you don't belong to anything, and so you don't feel a connection to anything, and you're removing yourself from the system. You don't have a good support system, family, community, and so then you're like, oh, I want to do whatever I want, and I don't, all I just need is the freedom to kind of do this thing. And it's the same problem. Just
no, you just
backward.
need the freedom to be a good worker. Make profit in taxpayer dollars. That's all the freedom that you think you need.
And so what's what you basically have is like on both ends of this communism and kind of capitalism idea is it's all just consumerism. It doesn't matter where on that line that you go from communism to capitalism, it's just consumerism. And when you're more focused on what you can buy as opposed to what you can build and what you can do, that becomes the problem. And so the focus, it's like, yeah, build yourself, and not so that you can like, oh, I bought crypto, now I got a bunch of money, so it's like, no, build something so you can actually build real legacy and wealth, right? You want to build, buy some land, build a community. Like, you don't see, any of these, libertarian like crypto millionaires and billionaires. They're like, okay, guys, we're going to buy a couple hundred acres and we're going to build a libertarian, collective. They don't do that. You have all these communist celebrities that make millions of dollars and they go, all right, guys, we're going to build a commune. They don't do that. It's all this self-focused, narcissistic consumerism.
It's like I see both of these systems as two sides, the two kinds of domestication that the system is putting us through. It's like one side is trying to domesticate us into good taxpayers who can pay, all of our income into the tax bucket, and the other side is trying to make you into like the perfect automaton worker who has no other obligations besides, besides his job. Like, you are broken down, atomized, unhealthy. You're being domesticated.
Right.
It's like, that's the message of the individual praxis. Stop being fat. Start eating fat. And
there you go.
And that's a joke. It's like, stop, do start eating fat, but really just stop being domesticated. Recognize that this is both of these, from the capitalist side and the communist side, and the state side, these are both domestications, forms of domestication. Stop being domesticated. You're an animal. You are not meant to be domesticated. All right.
Yeah.
Matt, I've really enjoyed talking to you. It's like, I knew I was going to really love this.
Yeah, man, this was a lot of fun. We, it's funny, like after like sort of engaging on like Twitter for so long, and then to, finally actually kind of have like a real back and forth. And that's what we're doing, is like, we're networking and connecting with people, and we're building community, and hopefully, these types of things lead to something that is no longer online. We build towards the real life, real deal thing.
Mm-hmm. I know it's like, and now I feel like we're really building the real libertarianism, the real practice, the way it should have been done from the very beginning, but wasn't. And it's why I'm so confident that, guys like you and guys like me, guys like Matt, and Pete Q as well. Like, these are the discussions, that this is the group that's actually going to accomplish, the great things, and being able to hand on a better society, a better civilization, and better values to our, to the next generation, in a way that was not done for us.
Yeah.
So, Josh, plugs.
You can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at Josh Rayner Gold. I have a website that doesn't really do much right now, but it's called Animal Food Plant Medicine. I'm going to be having some shirts and material kind of coming out through there. And then also, like, if you're interested in health coaching, you can shoot me a DM on Twitter or Instagram. We can talk about nutrition, supplements, fitness, emotional, mental health, all that kind of thing. Yeah.
And I just want to do one more plug before we get going. Paloma Verde CBD. And I actually have a whole bunch of new stuff I bought. See what, I had a real, during my, for like the last like 3-ish weeks, I had really, really bad ear pain. Like, it was like, I had impacted wax. I've always had a history of earwax buildup. And not to gross you guys out, but like, I had really terrible pain. It got impacted. And so it wasn't able to start moving stuff out. And it was like an 8 out of 10. And it was just horrible pain for like 3 weeks. And when it would start throbbing, it would go all the way up to a 10. It was just horrible. And what, it was like all the way down in my jaw. So what I did was I started getting like the CBD. Eventually I got it cleaned out, but yeah, and it stopped hurting. But for like 3 weeks, what I started doing was I started getting like this like CBD rub from Paloma Verde CBD. And I shit you not, this stuff really took my pain down, quite, to like a manageable, 4 or 5, to where I could put it off for, for like 3 weeks of dealing with this. And like that stuff works. The CBD salve, I swear by it now. The CBD sports screen that I was like rubbing on my face and all the way up in my ear, my jaw, that stuff is amazing. And it's like, I mean, that, got me through my whole debate, not like debate, but like my discussion with Dave. Like there'd be times where you'll see me take, in that debate where you'll see me take the ear thing out of my ear, just because just hearing his voice was making my ears throb up to a 10. And not he has a beautiful voice, Dave, but that had nothing to do with his voice, but it just hurt. And but by using that CBD rub, it's like I got my pain down to like a 4 or 5 to where I was functional and enough to at least continue putting it off and hoping it'll get better by doing nothing. But it never works out that way. But and so I want to say, hey, that shit really helped me. And if you go to palomaverdecbd.com, and use the promo code popular, you can actually get rid of any of use these salve and this rub and these gummies, which I use to help me sleep at night. These things can really, really help you. These products work. And Carlos and Vanessa are excellent human beings, and they are definitely following the individual praxis. So if you would, go there, use that promo code, you get 25% off your orders and over $75 and free shipping. And thank you for joining Popular Liberty. Josh, take care.
Thanks. See you, bud.